Okay, so this is a greenbelt project, and so it's not quite the same, but we're going to follow DMAIC, the same steps. You know, there's a little difference. Remember when I told you the difference is between Lean and Six Sigma? I know you've been around manufacturing, you've heard both the terms thrown around. Well, Lean is about reduction or elimination of waste, whereas Six Sigma is about keeping your process in control. All right? They go hand in hand. And first, really, you can't have one without the other. But to give you an example, Lean would be about reducing scrap parts you're throwing in the dumpster. Or scrap metal. Six Sigma would be about keeping your bar stock and tolerance all the way through your process. Okay? And what it does is when you have Six Sigma, you can predict the future, because if you continually monitor just the diameter of a bar stock going through a process, whatever, and you notice that everybody has a spec plus or minus 1,000 or plus or minus 10,000, whatever it is. They have a spec that's acceptable to the customer, and they monitor that. And if we know that common cause variation should be so many points up, so many points down, it should float around, right? Well, we start seeing a trend, if we're starting to slowly get out of tolerance on a process, we know that now we have a problem we need to fix before we get out of tolerance. So it's predictive nature. And it lets you know if you can actually hold a tolerance to a customer spec. I use tolerance because it's very easy, but there's other ways you can plug that in there. But Six Sigma is about reducing variation in response or process. So I'm just going to leave this up. I'm not going to. What we did, and this is just paperwork for a hospital, but I did the PowerPoint first, okay? And from the PowerPoint, I did the written assignment, right? And it was just two of us. You guys have multiple people in your group. Somebody can, well, define is pretty easy. I mean, you can have somebody do measure, analyze, improve, control. They can do all these sections of the PowerPoint and the paper. So basically, like here we talked about what we thought about doing our projects on. There's a couple of PowerPoints about what do we want to do our project on. Okay? Projects we considered. All right? Don't worry about the names, but this was for a hospital. And we did a Pareto chart. And I'm going to get into charts and stuff here in a second. But I labeled it define. All right? Here we're going, this is kind of our overview, what we talked about, what we considered, and then I basically broke everything down by demand. All right, here's my define. All right, I defined everything, told the current state of affairs. This is what we have now. This is how it's working now, right? Took some pictures, okay? Showed what the current reporting situation was. All right, this is how they do it. You know, don't worry about project charting. We used a couple of maps and process maps, but here's the point I'm trying to get to. Is I split everything up by demand, which makes it really easy. Now we're into the measure section of the PowerPoint. All right, what did we measure? Here's the data I collected. All right. Here's our analyze portion, okay? I did some here. I did this. That was a lot of work. We did a brainstorming session. We did a little PowerPoint sticky notes. I just had to show you that because I worked real hard on that hand coming up there, slapping those sticky notes up there. That took about an hour and a half to get that to look pretty good. So we did that. And as we go through here we are in the improve stage. You get where I'm going with that? Here's how we would like it to work. All right? We have a process map. Future state process map. We had a before process map. I'm not saying you have to go, because here's the point about the charts and everything I'm fixing to get to, is that gets covered in Mickey's class. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about charts when Mickey does this whole long section of charts. She's much better at it than me. Look at the name of the class. This is called Intro. So I'm not going into Pareto charts and making you calculate all that. You got me? So don't flip out when you see all these charts in here. This was for Mickey's class. We had to use these charts. Improvement, control. You know, control is pretty easy. You know, we identified whose job it is to fill out this report. We incorporated new training material. We keep documentation every year. Every year we give people a little test and say, do you know how to fill out this report? And give them an example, and if they can, then great. Keep up with it. So, and here's a little screenshots of how to actually do it, because they were going to actually incorporate this presentation right into training material. They're going to print this off and say, here's how you do it. All right? And then we put a conclusion in there. So, all of these little sections I expanded on and did my paper report. Does that make sense? This is just a general overview, right? Now I'll put both of these on the Google Drive for you to look at, so you can download them and do what you want to with them. So you can go through them yourself, kind of figure it out. Don't take my PowerPoint and then change the name on it. And start filling it. I know how to say you're going to copy it, but don't take my PowerPoint, use it as a template, start, because then I'll be like, well, come up with stuff on your own. But you can look at it and see how I did it. You can apply a new template. You can copy it over, you can apply a new template and change it all. Just don't turn it in looking like mine. That's kind of cheesy. So, any questions so far about how, when I say DMAIC is how we want to lay this out? Are you with me? I understand they're pretty simple steps. All right, say it with me. Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Right? So, I had a meeting over at QualServe, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about their project, what we talked about, maybe give you some ideas. One thing I should have mentioned, who's your best friend in time studies? The video recorder. Go get a video recorder and record motion paths. Set it up and record people working, and then review the footage, right? So that's your best friend as far as trying to figure out where you're wasting motion. What we talked about over there, they were kind of doing like a inventory control, 5S, labeling. They have parts over there, and they're just little pieces of wood cut out in the shape of a router. Please correct me if I go off topic, but I'm trying to be real simple. And they don't know how many of these stacks of wood they have, and they're all different shape sizes depending on what they do. So we talked about build some carts and build a box on the cart that only holds so much of this product and label it, right? And then put on the label how much fits in the box. And when somebody walks over to the box on a cart and sees it half empty, they know the box holds 100 and it's half empty. I only got 50 on hand. I have an upcoming project where I'm going to need 75. Well, I need to request 75 more parts. Does that make sense? All right. So, you know, motion paths, labeling, 5S, you're basically going to use these tools. Now, charting. If you want to include some charts, that would be great. I'll even help you with it in PowerPoint. Now you can ask, what kind of charting can I include? Well, you can do, what are you doing over here with your motion study? Or I mean, with your, you're keeping track of checklist of missing screens, can't find screens, right?
Yeah, and time they sit on the shelf.
All right.
How many times they get moved, possibly during a day.
If you're keeping track of that data, we can do how many times in a day do I spend, how many minutes in a day do I spend looking for a screen? And how many times, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty easy to chart.
Yeah.
So out of an 8-hour day, you just set your scale and your graph to be an 8-hour day, for example, and you say that or whatever, I say I waste 40 minutes just looking for stuff every day. That makes sense? Why am I looking for it? It doesn't exist. What other reasons? Well, 20 minutes of that time is spent because it's in the wrong place. 10 minutes of that time is spent because when I find it, it's broken and I have to take it over and request a new one. That don't include the time to make a new one. Do you get where I'm going with that? So now you've got a bar chart, right? And it's pretty, let me just, but bar charts are easy. Just, you know, this is, you know, how many times on a request, out of I get a request, I get about 100 requests a day, and out of those 100 requests, 5 of them are for missing, 5 of them have missing screens. And then out of those 100 requests, 2 of them have broken screens. You know, you get where I'm going with that, and we make a bar chart. You can put that in PowerPoint. It's pretty easy. It has wizards in there. I can even show you. We'll wait a little bit. I'm sure none of you are to the point where you're working on your PowerPoint charting yet, are you? All right, you're getting the data. So when you start these projects, you should be following the DMAIC steps. All right. You should be to the point where you're analyzing the data. All right. Now, how do we come up with ideas on how to improve? All right. Well, you know, as I showed in that PowerPoint, I had a brainstorming session, right? And basically, people sit around and come up with ideas and write them on a board. All right. Now, there's more other ways you can do that. Like I said, Mickey, she has this big. I don't want to sit here and make you go through some other stuff that Mickey's going to do. If we have time, we'll go through a brainstorming session. But basically, you sit around and come up with ideas, write them on the board. Take the ones that are duplicates, condense them. The ones that don't make any sense, you throw them away. And brainstorming sessions can be as informal as just somebody writes it down on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a big deal. All right? One thing about brainstorming, if you don't want to jump to conclusions, is we think we have a problem with waste because it's Joe's fault. He throws away everything. He don't want to work on it. He just throws it away. You don't do that. Okay? Let me show you this report real quick, since I have it up. This works here. Screen share. Escape. We're going to close that out. And these are posted. They're in your shared folder. They should end up in there before too long. Where's that? Where's that? Here's the notebook. And if you have a thumb drive, you can catch me before you get out of here. But this has charts cut right out of our PowerPoint, same picture, but it's just basically you can even use this for what you want to talk to when you basically this is the speech you're going to give when you're up there giving the PowerPoint. Does that make sense? maybe not word for word. I don't want you to come up there with this and read it all. But this is basically the speech you're going to give when you're presenting your slides. Does that make sense? And it's all defined, split up. I don't know if this one was quite labeled that way, but it's defined up, follows the PowerPoint exactly, goes straight along with the MAEC. Here, I even took that picture right out of there. See? But it's a written report. Because a lot of times people, you don't want to hand them a stack of 100 slides and have them flip through it, right? Condense it a little bit, expand on it. Are there any questions so far? So we're not all going to wait to the last minute to do our special project. Because remember our timeline. We are here. Blow that up a little bit. Here's where we're at. We have, you should be analyzing the data, coming up with a plan to improve the situation starting next week, control, so you have 1, 2, 3. I need a rough draft in 4 weeks, okay, to look over, all right? The following week, you're getting your final in here, in Intro to Lean, which you'll be reviewed and everything. It'll just be expanded on the other ones. You'll have a review sheet just like last time. And then you're going to present your projects on the 11th of August, and that's it. So we don't have much time in here. It's a summer class, so you should be moving right along on your project. So I suggest that if you have not done so, you get to work. Don't wait till the last minute. You know, pretty much everything we do in here, you show up to class, you got this class covered, right? Your special projects, I even give you time at the end of the class to work on it. So you should have all the time you need. You just need to take advantage of it. Every year I can tell when somebody did something in a week, every year. Alright. I've had people do things in a week and it was great, but I knew they were asking me too many questions. The questions they were asking, they should have been asking 3 or 4 weeks beforehand. They were waiting till the last week to ask me all these questions. So they did a great job. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's hard. So, so today we are going to go over some tools. We're going to do I thought I updated that. I did. Should be just in time. May get out early if it gets much hotter in here. That's good, man. We're going to do just in time tonight. And supplier partnerships. This will not take very long. Then I'm going to go over, I've got the rules printed for the simulation. I didn't give them to you because I might want to change them. So they're online. That way I can change them when you can't bring a piece of paper to me and say you gave me something. But no, I changed them without you knowing about it. All right. No, I won't change them. And we're going to talk about supplier partnerships. I don't know why I did that. Okay, so just in time. How many people have heard that phrase? What do you think about just in time?
It costs you downtime.
It costs you downtime.
It's hard to keep up with if you're on the delivery side of it.
Yes, it is.
Look, as long as your suppliers hold to their schedule, it's pretty good. But when you're transporting something 3 days away, things get hairy.
So you're saying you're one flat tire away from downtime?
Yes.
Well, I hear a lot of people say that. All right, so this is being recorded, and I'm going on official record. Just in time, depending on the situation, doesn't always work the way it was. In a perfect world, it would work perfectly. But just in time, basically, the brief lowdown of the definition of just in time is I have no inventory. When I need the leg of my widget, it will show up that morning at the door. I will take the leg of the widget and I will put it on my widget, and by the end of the day, it'll be finished product going out the door. I have no inventory. All right, whatever I make, I get that morning, I make it, and that evening, it's out the door to the customer. That is just in time. All right. So, just in time comes from Toyota. Okay. And this kind of goes a little bit with lean. It is a lean principle, but make sure I am recording. Basically, elimination of all activities that add cost but not value to the product. You should have heard this. All-out war on waste. Total commitment to quality. And here's the biggie: employee involvement. That means it's everybody's own job to come up with ideas to improve stuff. Now, this philosophy goes all the way down to the guy sweeping the floor. In Japan, the guy sweeping the floor, and it's happened before, all right? And I maybe not sweeping the floor, but not that there's anything wrong with sweeping the floor, but the lowest man on the totem pole comes up with an idea that says, we could save so much if we did it this way. And he brings it to his supervisor. And his supervisor is obligated by their principles of manufacturing to form a committee of at least a few other supervisors. They're supposed to at least talk about it. All right? And if it seems valuable and a good idea, they will start a project on it. And so they can't just blow off somebody, is what I'm saying. If somebody has an idea, no matter who you are, and it sounds good, that they're going to talk about it at least. And that's their part of employee involvement. Now, of course, some of them get thrown away. But that's the idea of employee involvement. And they have some rules. You can go ahead and circle. You need to know these. You need to know the rules for Toyota. First of all work shall be highly specified as to the content, sequence, timing, and outcome. That basically says there will be an SOP. This will be the way we do it. This will be the way we do it every time. We will never do it any other way unless we have a project and change the SOP. So there's no other way to do it. There's only one way to do it. Their way. Not that it can't change, but unless somebody, you just can't make if it's a group decision, you just can't say, well, I don't like doing it that way. No, there is only one way to do it. All right? That's rule number one. Basically, you're going to know how to do it. There's going to be documentation how to do the work. And this is the way everybody's going to do it. Japan is a very polite society. So if you ask somebody in that culture, if you ask somebody and this is, well, no, not right now, I don't think that's a good idea. That means no. Okay? That's the polite way of saying no. All right? So they have this rule. There's either yes or no. If you ask somebody in Japan about something and they say no, that means they're irritated and really no. Does that make sense? All right? So every customer-supplier connection must be direct, and there must be a yes or no way to send requests and receive responses. That means there's none of this, I ordered 100 parts. Will you have it here by Friday? Yeah, pretty sure we will. That don't work. It's either yes, I will, or no, I won't. And if it's no, I won't, I said, no, I will have it to you Saturday. All right? If you want to keep doing business with Toyota, you'll have it there Saturday. They'll probably take even a Sunday. But whatever you do, don't tell them a day that it's not. If he shows up early, that's great, but don't be late. That's basically what this says. No, yes or no. It will be here. No, it will not. This can be summed up in 2 words. Simple, stupid. All right? Pathway for every product and service must be simple and direct. All right? Any improvement must be made in accordance with the scientific method under the guidance of a teacher at the lowest possible level in the organization. This means that if we're going to do improvement, we're not just going to go off half-cocked. We're going to sit down and think about it. We're going to analyze, basically use the MEG, and that is how we are going to do improvement. So we have a methodology for doing improvement, and we're going to follow it. We're not just going to try stuff because it sounds like a good idea. Okay? Remember, the culture in Japan is not, America's Wild West. Yeah, we're going to get it done. I got a joke for you. It's on the redneck. What's the last thing the redneck said before he died? Y'all look at me. So, anyway, scientific method to do improvement. How do you know if people are doing this? You ask. You ask the questions. How did you do this job? How do you know you're doing it correctly? Because I followed the SOP. How do you know if it's defect-free? Because I followed the procedure to check it. Who would you talk to if you had a problem with this? Well, I would go to my supervisor. So if you ask an employee, they can't answer those questions if something's wrong. Right? It all goes back to lack of training, too. You would assume if somebody's doing a job, they would know how to do it, right? So, what is the objective of all this? Increase profits, cut costs, and reduce inventories. So why do we have to change like that? Because there's a lot of competition. How many kinds of cell phones can you buy now? How many people make different cell phones? Anybody name them off the top of their head? And then there's the cell phone people that make cell phones for other people. Because I was looking at buying a waterproof cell phone, a Caterpillar. Well, Caterpillar cell phones are actually made by Fortis. And you can buy them that say Fortis a lot cheaper than you can buy them that say Caterpillar, but they're the same phone. Right? So there's all different kinds of phones. So, eliminate all activities that add cost but not value to the project, waste and all-out war on waste, total commitment to quality, and employee involvement and participation in the decision-making process. All right? So, just in time is basically, like we said, product comes in the door, we use it that morning, and that night the product goes out the door to the customer. And it is basically says it's never ending. It's a continuous journey. You always get faster and better, just like continuous improvement. All right? You see how everything is kind of. You notice how we talk about just in time. It sounds like we're talking about lean and how it all kind of blends together, but that's the way it is. It's like I told you the difference between Six Sigma and lean, but yet again, I told you the process to complete one are very similar, and you can't have one without the other. Right? So I'm going to skip over that because we just went over that. Everybody understand, this sums it up. All right? Here's a stream, and we got waterfalls and gorges, and the stream's very unproductive as far as being a continuous path. And here we have a developed flow of an old river that's been around for a while. You know, the path doesn't change, how new rivers will jump the banks and cut new gullies and breaches, and here we have a deep one that's cut a deep path, and it spreads out. So a developed flow is less disruptive. All right. How many believe this works? Raise your hand if you believe this works. I am being sarcastic. Please don't raise your hand. Remember when we were at the beginning of the class? And I know this is going on YouTube, and some of you people out there on YouTube, even some of you other quality teachers may come and watch this video and say, that guy don't know what he's talking about. But this guy's been in the plant and seen what happens when you get a flat tire in your process line on the semi and your delivery don't show up on time and you didn't have any back. Now, not to say that zero inventory is not always the goal, because you always got to set the goal higher than you've achieved, otherwise it's not a goal, right? How much buffer you need is dependent on your situation. Do I need a day's worth of parts in stock? Do I need a week's worth of parts in stock? Do I need 6 months worth of parts in stock? Now, I'd pretty much have to answer no every time on that one. But you need a little buffer. Where that little buffer is depending upon your company and process. That makes sense? You don't want it piled to the ceiling, gathering dust. All right? Good indication. By the way, that's a good indication you have a problem. If there's a layer of dust on your inventory, you got a problem. All right? And the inventory, remember, that's finished goods. That can be work in progress, process. That can be the raw material coming in. All right? If you have metal coming in, and sheet metal or whatever, by the time you get to using it, it's all rusted up. You have to pay somebody to sit there and grind the rust off with a brush. Something's wrong. Or you need to get a cover for it or something. But that is the goal of just in time. And here are some of the other names for it. Almost in time, ain't never on time, lost everything, in the air, I like this one, on the dock. And then we got SOL. So, another deal about just in time. Now, we looked at the back end. We talked about inventory coming in. So the big part I like about just in time is if it works out right, and I'll tell you who does a good one of this is well, I don't know if Gateway's much, but Dell. You want a Dell computer. You go online, you say what options you want, what you want installed, that gets printed out, and then they make it. And it's a very smooth process. Right? You know, they put the cards in the computer that you want and install the software, and it goes right out the door. Usually not, there's a backlog on that wall. But when they get the order, it goes out the same day, is what I'm saying. So, basically, that's the biggie. Like, if somebody wants an iPhone and they want a green iPhone, they go online and they order a green iPhone. You've seen this where you can get the customized iPhones, the 5S, you get different color cases. It said design your own case, click here. That's a just-in-time process because that's going through there and the customer's ordering exactly what they want and what color. They get a ticket printed out and it gets made and shipped to them. That makes sense? Just like if you wanted a car. Make products that are good, Minimum possible lead time. Minimum possible. Didn't say 0 lead time, did it? Alright. Produce products with the features the customer wants and no others. Alright. So, some of the benefits of just-in-time, improvements in quality. Here's the biggie. Reduction in floor space. Just to prove a point, they listed it twice. Cash flow improvement. Alright. So, part of just-in-time involves immediate feedback of quality problems. Single source suppliers receive 100% of the business. I'm not going to elaborate because we got a whole other section on that that's coming up. And turning some of this work over to suppliers is what this means. So, here are some of the tools for just-in-time. Kanban and pool scheduling. What were you doing over here when you come get your inventory off the wall? That's a pull schedule, right? Everybody made a list of what they needed. I told you that inventory doesn't belong to you until it gets on the table, right? So the supplier takes responsibility for the inventory. That's setting out a truck on the docks or out in the yard, and somebody has to go get it. There's setup reduction, mistake proofing, focused visual factories, partnerships, continuous improvements, total preventative maintenance. We're going to go over that. Some of this bleeds over, some of this skip over it. Make problems visible to everyone. All right. Don't just gloss over that you have deep quality problems. Fix them. That's what that says. If you have a quality problem, guess what? Are people reworking the stuff? Know about it. I'll give you an example. This comes from a previous teacher here, but there's a company, and they're so proud of they've just installed new lighting, a new rework paint booth station, because they get stuff scratched, and they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to install this new rework line. A whole line dedicated to rework. And you hear the problem right there. But they would get scratches and dents on sheet metal. They produced part out of sheet metal. And they set up this whole line to go in there and polish that off, color match and spray it back on by hand, and then set it back out the door as new because it's scratch paint, right? But who wants to buy an air conditioner and pay $3,000 and have the side of it scratched up? Not me. So, the point being is, you spent all this money to build a rework station. Why didn't you fix the reason it's getting scratched in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. You're so proud of spending all this money on a new rework line to fix all these problems. Why don't you fix them before you have the problems in the first place? And that cut brings it right here. Improve operations before spending on new equipment. So you can't just keep throwing money at stuff and expect it to go away. Just in time gives you flexibility in volume, model, and mix. Basically, that means that I get an order for three part A widgets, and I get a part order for 3 B widgets. And then I'll go through there and I'll make my 3 B widgets, and then I'll make my 3 A widgets, and while I'm making those, I'll get an order for some C widgets, and so then I'll start making those right behind it. You know, like that. I can make a little bit small batch processing. That's more efficient. That's how we get big inventories. If we take so long to set up to make an A widget, and we spend a day getting set up, well, let's just make some extra, because it takes so long to get set up. We'll just make 100 extra of these A widgets. And that's where your inventory gets out of control. Making stuff you don't have orders for. And that's the whole principle behind this. Why are you making stuff you don't have an order for? Alright. Here's some other principles. Right quantity, acceptable quality. Inventory is like a drug. It is an addiction that must be overcome. Inventory, here's the deal about inventory. Years ago, let's see, if I wanted to buy a phone, talking before cell phones, from Ma Bell, I had 3 colors. All right, and I had the desk model, and then I had the wall model, and they all come in 3 colors, Bakelite. I don't know how many colors, but you had the old Ringer phone. They never tore up, they never broke, and guess what? You could build all the inventory you wanted up for that, all you wanted to, because that was the same 3 models they sold for 20 years. It didn't matter. There was no choices. We're not in that way. Everybody wants choices now. You know, if all I did was sold the same widget over and over year after year, I guess having an inventory would be all right, because I'd be like, let's just build up our inventory and shut down for a month at Christmas. Sounds great to me. That'd be all right. Only now, after Christmas break, everybody's buying the next widget, and your widget is obsolete, and you're stuck with all this stuff. You have to sell it, scratch and dent for nothing. Right? So put it on the auction block. So shorter lead times, lower defect rates. Let's get to that. Okay. Supplier partnerships, and I promise as soon as we get through this, I'm through until we're going to take a break and we're going to do start on the factory simulation and all that. So I'm just going to go through this because I'm recording it. So, one of the greatest things you can do is single source a supplier. How many people like buying the cheapest thing they can lay their hands on? Right? Just 3 people, including me, raised their hands.
I like the cheapest thing I can get as long as it's...
How many people like buying the cheapest thing? Well, let me give it to you. Let me give you an example. I don't always like to buy the cheapest thing I can lay my hands on, but I like to shop at Harbor Freight. And Harbor Freight's great. They actually have a quality tool. They got a warranty thing now that even if you buy the tool and it tears up, you just keep taking it back in. I don't know how they make money on that, because a lot of times they'll tear up. But let's just say I want a hammer drill. Now, how much hammer drilling am I going to be drilling? A hammer drill, you drill into concrete so you put an anchor. I went and bought a hammer drill for $20, 3/8 hammer. And I used it. Of course, I'm just putting little molding and 1/4-inch anchors. We're not talking about a big one. Just little stuff. All right? I gave $20 for that. If I'd bought another brand, I would have gave $100 for a quality one. Well, guess what? I'm not a contractor. I had this thing sitting on the shelf. The last time I used it, I think the head spun off. And I said, well, I got no money on it. But I've had it for 2 years. I've used it, but I don't use it every day. If I was going to use it for every day, I wouldn't have bought the Mastercraft brand. I would have bought the Chicago Electric brand, which is they have 2 brands there, right? They got the really, really cheap stuff at Harbor Freight, and then they got the next brand out. So I would have, and those are comparable to like DeWalt. Somebody's frowning over there.
No, I agree with you. That's why I tell everybody I get a lot of stuff from Harbor Freight. I don't use it all the time. Their freights, whatever. I got my money's out. Yeah.
So, I don't know how we got up on this subject. Where was I?
Buying cheap
Oh,
stuff. Yeah.
all right. You're buying cheap stuff. There's where I was at. Well, we don't want to buy cheap stuff in manufacturing. You know why? Because we're going to use it and abuse it, and it's got to be rugged, and it's got to be tough, it's got to be on time. We can't wait for it to come over on a boat from overseas to get it. You know, you're at home. I bought some stuff off Amazon. It took 3 weeks to get here, but it was the coolest little electronic board. It was you put any voltage you want into it, and turn it on, and it spits out whatever voltage you want.
Fix it, change that. You can get it one day now.
Yeah. But the point being is we have a little different principle than what we do at home. We need it rugged and tough. Now, what they're talking about is they make a deal with a company that says, instead of shopping around trying to buy the cheapest sheet metal, I'm going to go ahead and I want to work out a fair price where you make some money. I don't want you to gouge me, but I want you to make some money. I don't want to buy the cheapest stuff. I want a quality product, and I'm willing to pay for it. All right? Now, you remember earlier I said how many people go out and buy the cheapest thing you can? How many people go out and buy the cheapest mattress you can? Nobody raised their hand, right? Because you know what happens when you buy the cheapest mattress you can, they usually don't last very long. You ever seen the signs on the road that say $99 new mattress? Well, there's a reason they're $99. All right. So, having a single source saying that I will always buy from you, you will always be on time, and you will always give me a quality product, and that you will meet my specifications is a win-win for everybody. Does that make sense? Because it takes a headache off the company, all right? And you don't have to worry about it because they're always on time. And that's where that pull schedule, we hear just in time, but, you know, when we do a pull schedule, what are we doing with our inventory? We're just pushing it off on the suppliers. And they'll bring in a tractor trailer and park it full of their stuff for you to use. So sometimes when you hear that just in time or a pull schedule, you're just pushing the inventory off to somebody else. But hey, they're used to it. That's what they do. They also become a source of expertise. If I'm having quality problems, maybe I can help them. Maybe they can come in and help me. What's going on with your product? You know, this is not like clicking buy now on a button. We actually get to talk to a person when we need help. All right. So we have this personal relationship that we've built up with these people, this supplier. Does that make sense? All right. That's why I tell people about buying stuff locally. If you're a contractor, you can get all this stuff real cheap on the internet. But guess what? At 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't call up the internet and tell them to bring you a control card to fix the multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that's been down for 16 hours. You can't do it. The internet will not come to you. You are going to at least have to wait a day. But if you have a local vendor, they can get on the phone, they'll wake up, and they'll go in unlock the door, they'll get it. If they don't have it, they'll jump in a car, and they'll run up to Northwest Arkansas and get a replacement card, whatever they got to do. And I've even seen the point where they actually get on the phone and start calling other companies in the area to see if they have one in their storeroom. I'll borrow it for a day, and they'll give it to them. That's how that works. So we make a partnership with our supplier. And in turn, they give us timely shipments, production schedules. We work with product design. We get long-term contracts. We say we're going to buy this widget, this material for this widget for 3 years. You're going to give us this price break, and you're going to help us out. Stable production. Here, all this stuff. By the way, I didn't make these PowerPoints. I did clean up a bunch. There wasn't more. But we can improve cost, reduce lead time, packaging specifications. All right. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, if anybody's been in a packaging line, those palletizers and product lines are made to fit a certain width of box. And some of them are actually made, like let's say I want to buy a box from the box company, and this is old school, but I have this giant conveyor system, and all these boxes that come in, I need a 3-digit barcode on them, and this 3-digit barcode as it's coming down the line tells it to go to dock A, B, or C. And depending on what we're packaging it, dock A, B, or palletizer A, B, and C, that's where it needs to go. So I order from my supplier, I work with them, and then they print, when they're making the box, they print the barcode on the side of it for me. That barcode means nothing except in my line, my facility. Okay? I use that example because it's true. I've seen it before. Shared cost reduction. That means that if your supplier can save a little money in his process or get stuff a little cheaper at a better quality, he's supposed to make your stuff cheaper. I don't know how often that works, but if he gets a deal, you're supposed to get a deal. Does that make sense? That's how that works. Timely communications. If I have a supplier partnership and I say, Fred, Are the parts going to be here on Friday? What's he supposed to say?
Yes.
Yes.
Or,
No.
not maybe. He can tell me whatever he's got to tell me, but he's not going to say maybe. He's going to say yes or no. So, here's some advantages. You're able to focus on that one source. You get all this headache. You're not having to shop around and deal with all different people like you were before. I actually, well, there's really no way they can do it. You ever heard of a lumber buyer? All right. There's actually, I worked for hardwood flooring. We had all these lumber buyers that would actually get out and drive around. And since hardwood, you actually look at the log. I don't know how they do it, but they determine what the log is worth. But they would go out. Of course, lumber's custom, but we actually paid people to find lumber. That makes sense? All right, that was their job, to find different sources of lumber. Well, we don't want that, and we want a steady supply chain. But sometimes we get good wood, and sometimes we get crappy wood. We want all good wood, right? Well, that's a variable market, so this depends on the season. But for the most part, we don't want to pay somebody to just go out there and hustle trying to find stuff for us. Does that make sense? We just want to set it up and have it work. So back to get what you pay for. That's so cool a little bit. I just need a place to sleep. So the whole point of supplier partnerships is you get what you pay for. All right. Don't buy a cheap mattress is the second part. You want to get. I don't care what mattress you buy, but don't buy cheap. You'll regret it eventually. You can get away with a cheap box spring. All right. I think that's it. You guys take a break. All right.